What's up, Falcon fans? On today's episode, we're going to talk about the New Orleans Saints versus the Atlanta Falcons. If you guys like this type of content, hit that like button. If you guys hate this type of content, hit that dislike button or hurt your boy's feelings. Well, maybe just a little bit. But if you want to do a huge favor for your boy, by hitting that subscribe button or help out the empire grow. So on that note, let's dive into the 7 categories for today's episode. Let's get started with category number 1. Home field advantage versus home field advantage. So the Atlanta Falcons will travel to Caesar Superdome. So I'm going to give my points to the New Orleans Saints. So now let's talk about category number 2. Coaches versus coaches. Arthur Smith versus Dennis Allen. Let's start out with Dennis Allen's first. So, if you guys want more information about Allen, go back to my preview video in week 12, that was a month ago, about the New Orleans Saints versus the Atlanta Falcons. But last time we met, they were a 5-5 record, and now they're an 8-8, so they won 3 games out of the 6 games after we faced them. Oh wait, I meant to say 5 games, my bad. So the only games they lost to were against us, and then the Detroit Lions. They're a really good team. They're first place in their division, and to the LA Rams. There are a 9-7 record right now. So the only teams that they won against the Buccaneers, and the Giants, and the Panthers. And they've been averaging over 20 plus points per game, and they've been allowing the opponents to score under 15 points per game. Now besides the Rams and the Detroit Lions, but everybody else, and of course us, but everybody else, they've been allowing under 15 points per game. So that's something that they have improved on. So when it comes to Arthur Smith, it's 50-50 with me. I like some of his play calls, and there's some other play calls I don't think fit the right time. Or why did you decide to do a pass play instead of a run play? The numbers are down very significantly when it comes to the running attack compared to last year. We had over 2,700 total rushing yards compared to 2,000 and less than that in the total rushing yard department. I know Marcus Mariota had over 400 rushing yards, so that kind of factor a little bit. But even still, yes, there are some play calls I actually like a lot. I think he does a really good job in creating those. The problem is the execution and the timing and everything else. Now, of course, we can't sorely blame on everything on the head coach, because we do have to blame a little bit on the players because they're the ones that are trying to perform it. But even still, everything that goes wrong goes to the top. And what really frustrates me, and I think for a lot of Falcon fans too, is you cannot lose to bottom tier teams. They're in their dead last division. So when it comes to the Commanders, they're dead last. To the Cardinals, they're dead last. To the Titans, they're dead last. To the Panthers, they're dead last. And to the Bears, they're dead last in their own division. That's unacceptable to lose all of those games that are... It frustrates me so much, and I won't go into further detail, but just to let you guys know, that's how much I'm just ineptitude of how badly and poorly scheme-wise you do against really bad teams. So anyways, my points goes to Dennis Allen. So now let's talk about category number 3. Saints quarterback and wide receiver versus the Falcons secondary. Let's start out with the Saints. So Derek Carr leads the New Orleans Saints with the 14th most passing yards when it comes to 3,961 total receiving yards. And that's not bad. And then when it comes to the wide receiving core, of course, Chris Olave has already broken 1,000 receiving yards. He's the most targeted in the entire squad with 135 targets. He has 84 receptions, and he averaged 90 yards with 6 receptions per game ever since the Minnesota Vikings game. Now, against the Carolina Panthers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he has under 30 receiving yards, but outside of that, against the Rams, the Lions, the Falcons, and the Vikings, he has more than 90 receiving yards and more in those games. Now, of course, they got Rashid Shaheed, I think that's how you say my boy's name right. Of course, he's been kind of balling out as the number 2 guy because Michael Thomas has been out, but A.T. Perry, he's kind of doing his thing a little bit, but everybody else is kind of low, so it's really Chris Olave, and we have to shut him down. Last time I said that against the Chicago Bears, they didn't have any weapons besides DJ Moore, and see how that went with us. So now let's talk about the Falcons secondary. No question that the Atlanta Falcons secondary did not act like themselves all season long when it came to the Chicago Bears. Hopefully that was just a phenomenally and just a one-time thing. Maybe the cold had to do something with it. I have no idea. But usually they can handle themselves. They have not allowed a lot of wide receivers that go over 100 yards over the top on them. Only that happened twice so far with Mike Evans and then D-Hop. But everybody else, they've been handling their business until DJ Moore happened. So hopefully, defensive coordinator Ryan Nielsen and secondary coach and Steve Jackson can come up with some type of coverage schemes to making sure that Chris Olave does not go over the top where Derek Carr has to go to other targets to try to beat us. But I think we have way too much talent in the secondary where we can definitely line up with our individual matchups compared to the New Orleans Saints wide receiving core, because they only have one true number one threat while we have five defenders at all times on the field. So I'm going to give my points to the Atlanta Falcons secondary. So now let's talk about category number 4. Saints running back, tight end, and O-line versus the Falcons front seven. Let's start out with the Saints. When it comes to the New Orleans Saints offensive line and not allowing the quarterback to get sacked a lot, they rank number 7. That's 32 total sacks they have given up. That's really good. In compared to the New York Giants, who's ranked dead last by giving up 83 total sacks. That just speaks louder than volume than words. Is that even how you say it correctly? But when it comes to the rushing attack, they have kind of fallen off the cliff in the past couple of years, right? Now, they rank number 21 in total rushing yards so far with 1,588 rushing yards. And the crazy thing is they don't have a lot of rushing touchdowns either to really gloat about. They only have 11 rushing touchdowns so far, and Alvin Kamara leads them with 5 and Taysom Hill with 4. But remember, in the past 3 years, they've been having less than 12 rushing yards. Now, the last time they had over 30 rushing touchdowns was back against the Drew Brees era in 2020. So that's something to think about. And then when it comes to their tight end receiving core, Juwan Johnson is a monster that you can't question about. Now, yes, the last time he didn't do so hot against us, so that's good job. But against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he had 90 receiving yards. He has 12 targets, caught 8 of those for a bad boy of 1 touchdown. But he's been scoring 3 touchdowns in the past 3 games. So there's something we have to look forward to stopping him, because he's a little bit questionable for this game. And so if he's out, we have to focus on Foster and Jimmy Graham just in case if they want to do some big yardage down the middle game plan. But now let's talk about the Atlanta Falcons front 7. I've been hard on this Falcons front 7 a lot. Now, they do rank number 21 when it comes to total sacks, and that's 39. And that's actually pretty good compared to the past 6 years where we've been ranking in the bottom tier of sacks getting after the quarterback. So that has been improvement, because I did see a statistic that the Atlanta Falcons had one of the most improved sacks caliber in a single season. So that's something very interesting to look at. And then we also have to take into consideration the great concept of blitz concepts and disguises when getting after the quarterback with the linebackers, with sometimes with the safeties, and then of course, you know, with our front 4 at the helm, just pushing back the offensive line. Good stuff on that department. Plus, we are causing turnovers galore with 18 forced fumbles. That's a fantastic job. 8 interceptions so far, and we average 2 to 3 sacks per game. And that's something that the Atlanta Falcons haven't achieved for a long time. But the only problem thing I've noticed recently, we do get beaten in the run game recently. Now, in the beginning of the season, we were stopping the run pretty well, but for the past 5 games, we were just being gashed, you know, down the middle, sideline, you know, scat backs, power backs. We just couldn't stop the run, and that's been really hurting this Atlanta Falcons front 7. So on that note, I'm going to give my points to the Atlanta Falcons front 7. So now let's talk about category number 5. Falcons quarterback and wide receiver versus the Saints secondary. Let's start out with the Falcons. As it stands so far, Heineke is questionable for this game. Now, obviously, that will change in a couple of days, you know, when game time is ready. But if he can't go, Desmond Ridder is ready at the helm, and that definitely, you know, flip-flopped, you know, the entire offensive side of the ball. You know, when both quarterbacks do a good job and then they do a terrible job at the same time, there's no stability in that backfield so far, and that really affected the wide receiving core and Drake London and everybody else, where Drake London's the only guy so far with 800 yards or more. He has 101 targets with 65 receptions, and everybody else in the receiving core has under 300 receiving yards so far. That's not great. And Drake London only has 2 touchdowns this entire season. So, it is what it is at this point. So now let's talk about the New Orleans Saints secondary. They do a really great job on the heavy press man defensive scheme concepts with Paulson, Adebo, Taylor, Yamadou. If that's how you say my boy's name, I'm not sure. But they do a pretty good job in coverages. Then we can't forget about Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger, because last time we met, he got 2 interceptions from us. And then, of course, you got Marcus May, who's a pretty good, strong, heavy hitter safety. And then I think in total, they have 16 total interceptions, and they have 8 forced fumbles. So they are a turnover machine. I think they rank in the top 5 of turnovers. And they have 96 pass deflections, and Paulson Adebo has 17 of them. So I'm going to give my points to the New Orleans Saints. So now let's talk about category number 6. Falcons running back and tight end and O-line versus the Saints front 7. Let's start out with the Falcons. I really do like our 2 tight end concepts in the run game and especially in the passing game. Kyle Pitts and Jonnu Smith do a lot of good stuff on the field when it comes to getting the first downs, getting the check marks in the middle of the field. Great job, whoever the quarterback it is. They feel comfortable in the pocket and throwing to those guys. It just shows that Kyle Pitts had 87 total targets. He has 51 receptions. Jonnu Smith 67 targets and caught 47 of those, and so for a grand total of for Pitts 640 receiving yards and for Smith 553, and both of them roughly average around 11 to 12 receptions per catch. So when it comes to the offensive line, we rank number 16 and not allowing the quarterback to get hit, and that is 39. So that's not bad. It's not great, but it's not the worst at the bottom tier when it comes to, I said the Giants, the Jets, Titans, and the Panthers or the Commanders, where they're averaging over 60 plus sacks of the quarterback getting hit and taken down, and a lot more as well. So when it comes to the Atlanta Falcons rushing attack in total, last year we were ranked in the bottom 5. Now this time we rank number 8 with 2,081 total rushing yards. That's not good. I mean, it's good, but it's not good to what Arthur Smith standards supposed to be. Now, when it comes to, total touchdowns, we only have 14 rushing touchdowns. That ranks number 16. But of course, our stars is Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. And for some reason, CP has not been utilized correctly this entire season. And I don't know why. Now, Bijan Robinson is very close to get over 1,000 rushing yards. I think he can make it. Tyler Algier is a great complementary piece to the run game. Now, clearly, he can be a starter in the other team. But he's a great number 2 guy no matter what the situation is. Because he will bowl down any pin that's in his way. So now let's talk about the Saints front 7. So when it comes to the Saints stopping the run, they don't rank very highly. They gave up 1,960 total rushing yards, and they have allowed running backs and quarterbacks to get 10 rushing touchdowns off them. When it comes to getting after the quarterback, they rank number 28 with 33 sacks. That's in the top 5 below tier. That's really bad for them, because usually they get after the quarterback with 45 plus sacks or more. So that's very unusual for them. Now, their 2 best pass rushers are Mario Davis, the linebacker, with 6.5, and then Carl Grandson with 8.5. And he's new to the table. I only recognize him from last year, where he kind of had a breakout season with 5.5 sacks last year. But besides that, he seems to be their best pass rusher, so we can't underestimate him at all. I'm going to give my points to the Atlanta Falcons. So now let's talk about category number 7. Special teams versus special teams. So when it comes to the New Orleans Saints kicker and Blake Grupe, he's been having a fantastic job so far this season. 35 attempts with 28 total field goal completions. Now, his worst games statistically were only 3 against the Chicago Bears, the Houston Texans, and then the Green Bay Packers, but that was only because of 50% of accuracy. I mean, really, it's really not that bad. When it comes to Younghoe Koo for the Atlanta Falcons, he has 36 attempts. He got 31 in, pretty good. Now, he's been having a little struggle lately, unfortunately. His 2 worst games statistically were against the Chicago Bears, where he missed 2 out of the 3, and then for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he missed 2 out of the 3 as well. So on that note, I'm going to give my points to both teams, because at the total amount of points, they both have 118 total points. So now let's talk about the final conclusion. I have us losing to the Saints 24-17. Believe me, this kills me for even saying this. This is blasphemy. But we haven't beat the Saints back-to-back in a single season since 2016 when we reached the Super Bowl. Of course, I know that the New Orleans Saints, when it comes to their offense side of the ball, 5 of the starters are banged up, but even still, remember some of the teams we faced this year when their starters were banged up and then they had their backups playing and they balled out phenomenally against us because Arthur Smith did not take full advantage of the opponent's tragedy. So on that note, if you guys lasted this long to the very end of the video, thank you so much for taking your own personal time and day to watch the Falcon content videos. Here's more on the screen if you guys are interested in. So what do Falcons do? Rise up. Until the next episode, show love and peace to the world, and peace.